I am Marcus James Dixon with Gold Derby, and we would like to welcome Daniel Pemberton to our film composers panel for Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse. And I kind of want to start with the incredible box office numbers for this movie. Today, it's made 380 million in the US, 690 million worldwide. What is your reaction to having so many people watching and loving this movie on the big screen?
I mean, it's always really nice when a movie actually super connects with people. I don't think I've ever done any movie that's connected as intensely as Spider-Verse. I mean, I'm slightly like whatever about box office because I don't think it always correlates to great work. But it is nice when it does correlate to great work, and I'm really proud of like this, like what all of us did on this film. So it's great when it does seem to really connect with people.
Mhm. And the movie opens with Haley Steinfeld's character Gwen playing a drum solo as she sort of recounts what happened in the first movie. And it's such an original idea. Can you take us through that those discussions that you guys had?
Well, yeah, I mean, all through this project, it's such a collaborative process between the three directors, the editor, and Phil and Chris. And I think one of the things that really works, so I think one of the reasons that this film really works is we're all throwing ideas backwards and forwards with each other, being like, what if we tried this? What if we tried that? And that drum intro, I think was Phil's idea. Um, and it was one of those things that was like, okay, this feels really cool, but also really complicated because it's like this has to feel like a free-form drum solo, but also has to every animation shot. And we're going to keep tweaking, like with a film like this, they're always tweaking because they're always pushing for it to be like the best it can be. So we ended up recording drums, got a fantastic drummer called Mike Smith who plays on this score. And I wrote some stuff. That was the actual things she's hitting in that were all scored out, so it could correlate to the imagery. Then got Mike to play it, and then once it builds, I give him more space to improvise more and put more of his own personality into it. Because for me, what's really important with a score like this is, as well as being incredibly precise about what you write, it's also about giving the players moments to be able to express themselves as musicians.
And it must have been a really fun experience playing in so many different Spider-Verses for this movie. And how did you go about keeping them all distinct music-wise? I mean, what's the big difference between Gwen's score and Miles's score, for example?
Yeah, I mean, one of the things that is very important with this film is trying to, like, in the same way the artists have made each world feel and look very different. It's important the score could do that as well, but also that all those scores could combine and these different sound universes when those two universes combined. So I would take a lot of inspiration from the art direction um, in those worlds. So Gwen's world, for instance, is very dreamlike. It's watercolors. It's got a kind of um, a vibe to it that is very different to, let's say, 2099's world, which is very sort of technological, modern, and aggressive. So with Gwen's, I wanted to play a bit on her sort of story as being in a kind of 90s kind of indie band, and introduce that kind of slightly pop rock grungy kind of element to her sound, but then also the kind of dreamy delay like feel of her environment. Whereas Miles's world is very influenced by hip hop, and I wanted to capture that energy. A really big part of Miles's world is record scratching, which we introduced in the first film, and that's like a really big part of this score where we did this thing called like Scratch the Orchestra, where we'd record the orchestra performing. We would then put it on kind of vinyl, like digital vinyl, and then get this amazing DJ Blakey to re-scratch those performances in, which gives the film a very like cut and paste, like off-kilter vibe, incredibly time consuming. But for me, it was a really good way to make the film sound and feel very different. And it's something I want to do for a long time. And on this film, I want to do it like more of a showcase for that element. So when we first meet Miles, we scratch every sound you see on screen. So you see like felt tip pens when he's drawing or spray cans. We're scratching rhythms out of those sounds, and it builds and builds and builds to my favorite one, which kind of like ties in with John Powell's comments earlier about what makes him laugh when he's making music. So we did a thing with a goose. There's a scene with a goose attacking Miles in the spot that just happened to be caught in their vortex. I was like, let's scratch a goose sound. And we got a goose noise. And we just started scratching the goose on top of the score. And it's really funny and it sounded really cool. Like a goose sound is a very good sound to scratch.
Hmm.
And maybe, this is the year of bird noises in soundtracks. Me and John, everyone will be copying it next year.
I love that. This might be the first movie in history that has scratched a goose.
I think it is. That is its claim to fame.
And the big movie villain this time around is the Spot, played by Jason Schwartzman. And he's a man who can manipulate time and space with different holes. What was the trickiest part of creating these dread sounding music cues for the Spot?
Well, Spot weirdly was actually the hardest character for me to nail. Sometimes, like every character has a theme, and it's really important for me that those themes are like super recognizable within a couple of seconds because this movie moves so fast. So when you hear 2099 sound, that's him. You hear Gwen's sound. And with Spot, I didn't know what I wanted to do first of all. So I did like tons of research, like research and development in this film where I would just go through millions of sonic ideas. And originally I had all these ideas for Spot that were based on these kind of synthesized sort of spotty hole noises. And we made tons of these and then realized they just didn't really cut through in the film in the way I wanted to, and didn't really create the sense of dread, like you say, that character has. So we ended up like experimenting with like my assistant who's very good at making noises, and I came up with this kind of noise that was like it's basically detuned cello sound, and his theme is multi-layered detuned cellos, and as the film progresses, the distance between each of those notes gets bigger. So if you have bow bow bow, that might be the first time you hear it, but later wow wow wow, later the layering is getting wider and wider, which makes him feel more and more unstable. And again, that's like reacting to the art style, where if you look at his art style very early on, his lines are very clearly defined. But as he grows in power, those lines become more unstable and move away from the key ink lines. So I was doing the same thing with the score of making the musical notes likewise also move away from the core central note they're meant to be playing.
Hmm. There's a track near the end called The Anomaly where Miles figures out he's in the wrong universe and we start hearing whistling sounds.
Yeah.
And can you explain how these are actually a callback to the first movie?
Yeah, well, in the first movie, I put whistling in when Miles is at school. I'll get my whistling a bit better. So we have this riff in the first one. And what I like with this movie is trying to connect as many parts of the story as possible through different motifs or different sounds and ideas. And this felt like a way to have something that was familiar from the first universe and the first sound, but sounded messed up and weird. So you knew it wasn't what it was supposed to be. So when we first meet, like when we get into that world, we have, first of all, we have these kind of like odd off-kilter whistles, which we haven't really heard before. We've heard them a bit in the train chase, but then we bring that riff back in for a very small bit, just to sort of say this isn't, seems familiar, but it's not. But some of those whistles, like I recorded a bunch of whistles in a cemetery in South London, in Peckham. There's a cemetery called Nunhead Cemetery, very nice cemetery. Lots of old Gothic cemetery things in it. And I like making weird noises if something's got an echo. If something's got an echo, most people just go like this, right? So there's this mausoleum that's all made of stone. I'm doing that. I'm like, this echo is amazing. Like it's very small, tight stone. So I started whistling into it and recording it on my iPhone, this iPhone. And it had such a cool vibe. I sampled all that up and that's what's in the film.
Hmm. Well, I'm curious if there's anything you can tease about beyond the Spider-Verse coming up, the trilogy ender here, because the second one ended on quite a huge cliffhanger, but I don't want you to get fired. So is there anything you can tease
Yeah,
without
yeah. There's,
spoiling?
unfortunately, we're all sworn to silence on Beyond the
Yes.
Spider-Verse because anything we say will get turned into the world's biggest news story,
Yes.
apparently.
I totally understand that. Let me go back in time. How did you originally become the Spider-Man guy, the composer?
Spider-Man guy. I had met with Phil and Chris a long time ago, and we got on very well and we sort of became friends. And they said they're involved with this Spider-Verse, this new Spider-Man movie, and I kind of got pitched it when I was in the middle of recording something else. And I was always a bit wary of superhero movies and also a bit wary of people telling me they're going to do something that's never been done before because people say that a lot. And they did this whole pitch, and I thought, okay, this actually looks really cool. And but it was when they introduced Peter Porker, 2D pig, which now doesn't seem that revolutionary. But at the time, I was like, "You're really going to put a 2D pig in this cartoon?" And they're like, "Yes." I thought, "Wow, if you're really, really going to do that, you guys definitely mean business." So from that point on, I was like, "I've got to do this movie."
Hmm. Well, we love the second one. Can't wait to see the third one. So thank you, Daniel, for chatting with us, and we'll see you at the group panel discussion.
Okay.